Good morning to you. Mark Sept with HurricaneTrack.com here, taking a look at Hurricane Irma, putting this together at 10 minutes till 11 Eastern Time on Monday, September 4th, Labor Day, 2017. And the very latest on Hurricane Irma, this is the 11 o'clock advisory package from the National Hurricane Center. And the headline here, hurricane warnings now in effect for portions of the Leeward Islands, and now hurricane watch issued for the British and U.S. Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico. So let's go over the details from the 11 a.m. Eastern Time advisory package. Winds are 120 miles per hour. These are going to go up, I guarantee it. And the pressure down to 944 millibars. And it's really starting to intensify now. Located at 16.8 north. And we need to remember that because we're going to analyze this on a map in just a moment. And it's moving west-southwest still. Very troubling to see that. West-southwest still at 14 miles per hour. Taking a look at the wide shot to give you a perspective of where Irma is located. And so 16.8 north, is that correct? Let me just go back and make sure. 16.8, yes it is, Mark. 16.8 north, so the eye can clearly see it right there. That's 16.8 north. Let's put a dot there. And so if it were to move due west, and it's actually still losing latitude, but if it were to move due west, essentially, then it would run right across the islands. But hopefully it's going to gain some latitude and maybe skirt to the north of the islands after this dip. Maybe something like this. We can hope for that. But hope by itself, definitely not a good planning tool. A few things to point out with this. The upper level outflow, very well established. The eye is in the center of the circulation of the hurricane. If we zoom in here, you can really see that clearly. Very well defined eye, and the central dense overcast right in here. It's located in the middle of all of that. Everything pointing to an intense hurricane, which is unfortunate because it looks like it's going to impact some land areas directly over the next few days. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go back to the Hurricane Center homepage here. Got to get my thoughts together. There's a lot to consider here, let me tell you. I want to get this discussion. Cool, it's out. This is what I wanted. This is very, very important. So I'm going to read the discussion, and then we're going to go through the rest of my tabs here. So this is from the 11 a.m. advisory, and this is the forecast discussion. This is very important because this is written by a person, and in this case, Dan Brown, I do believe, Forecaster Brown, and it tells you why he is thinking what he's thinking when he wrote this. So this is getting inside the brain of the forecaster. So the first paragraph is going to discuss the structure currently. And I'm just going to read it to you and then kind of explain it. The satellite presentation of Irma has improved markedly over the past 24 hours, with the eye becoming larger and much more distinct. A NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft has reported peak 700 millibar flight level winds of 117 knots, with step frequency microwave radiometer winds of 107 knots. Basically, folks, what that means is Irma is strengthening. That's the bottom line. A dropson data that support a minimum pressure of 944 millibar. These data support an initial intensity of 105 knots, and it has concentric eye walls and a double wind maximum. So, eye wall replacement cycle has likely begun. We don't really understand those very well, but it's a cycle that it goes through where the inner eye wall will eventually collapse as a new one forms farther out, and then it contracts, and it does this, and the hurricane cycles through, and sometimes it can get very intense. We saw that with Harvey. And then the next paragraph, Irma is expected to maintain and remain within a very favorable environment for strengthening during the next several days, and additional intensification appears likely. However, eye wall replacement cycles are likely to cause some fluctuations in intensity during that time. The Hurricane Center forecast brings it to Category 4 strength within the next 24 hours, and then maintains Irma as a powerful hurricane during the next 5 days, assuming that the core of the cyclone does not move over any of the Greater Antilles. And we're going to look at that in just a moment and what that would mean. That would be Hispaniola and Cuba as an example. Irma has been moving now into this paragraph west-southwestward at about 11 knots to the south of a strong mid-level ridge It is supposed to turn west later today, and then west-northwestward Tuesday as it reaches the southwestern portion of that ridge. So it's just like following a building along a sidewalk, from block to block, and when you get to the corner, you take a right. Except in this case, it's not going to be a hard right, at least not yet, presumably. As mentioned in the previous discussion, a large latitude trough is expected to amplify over the eastern United States, and we have heard about this trough a lot. During the next few days, the global models are unanimous, okay, so this is very important right here, in lifting the trough out to the northeast by late in the week, allowing the Atlantic ridge to build westward on days 3 through 5. The track guidance has again shifted westward, another key ingredient there in this whole thing, and southwestward at days 4 and 5, but the models remain in very good agreement through the forecast period. The updated NHC track forecast has been adjusted southwestward late in the period and lies very near the consensus of the Euro, the GFS, and the HWRF models. All right. They're going to start doing much more in the way of upper air soundings from balloons and Gulfstream 4 jets. In other words, the U.S. government is going to put a lot of effort right here in this paragraph into sampling the environment in and around Irma, pardon me. And that's very important because then the overnight runs should have that data as part of their initialization, and maybe we can get tightly clustered guidance and start figuring out where this is going to end up. And then just the caveat here, users are reminded not to focus on the exact forecast track, since strong winds and heavy rainfall extend well away from the center. And you folks down in the islands, you need to remember this too. In addition, the track errors are 175 to 225 statute miles at days 4 and 5. So it could be off where the center is forecast by as much as 225 miles. And then, of course, 4 key messages. And these are all important. Basically, the impacts are coming. It could directly affect the Lesser Antilles, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico as a dangerous major hurricane. It's not looking good. So we're going to move on and take a look at things. Of course, now there's the increasing threat to Florida Peninsula and the Keys, and swells are going to start affecting the southeastern U.S. Basically, everything is starting to ramp up from here on out, and as you can see, they bring the wind speed up here, maxing out at 145 miles per hour. And the reason that it goes down is not explicitly that they know that it will, but they're just assuming that there will be eye wall replacement cycles, and we'll just see how this plays out. It won't surprise me if this makes it to 160 miles per hour or higher because of the upper ocean heat content that it will be encountering. Just real quick, let's go look at the track map. That should have updated by now, and you can get an idea of what this looks like. Excuse me, in graphic format in there. They have it almost making landfall at day 5 over Cuba, and the key here, does it avoid the mountainous terrain through here? And if it does, even land interaction with Cuba on this side won't be as disruptive as it would if it passed over the eastern part, or certainly the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So we're going to have to watch that. And of course down here, it looks like they have it moving very close, if not over, some of the islands. And we're going to look at that in more detail in a moment. All right, so we've already looked at all this. Let's look at the upper ocean heat content. And again, Irma is going to be moving through some very warm ocean heat content areas, and even along the north part of Cuba, even higher. We're getting into the upper part of the scale here, and I want to zoom in on that. That's where the forecast track takes it from the Hurricane Center at day 5, like right in here somewhere. Well, that upper ocean heat content is up on the upper part of the scale, now the upper third. So even with the core potentially over land, a good deal of the circulation will be over some of the highest heat content in the western Atlantic basin. Something to keep in mind, that it may not weaken as much. So very troubling days ahead for sure. This is something to take very seriously. The different track, just going to go over this briefly, very tightly clustered as the discussion talked about, with a very small envelope there. You see there's not much variability. Forget this model. It's not even, I don't even know why they have it. It's nothing. It's climatology and persistence. And that's all that needs to be said. But the bottom line about that model, it looks like a track very close to the Antilles here, after passing maybe over some of these islands of the Northeast Caribbean. The GFS ensembles from the 6Z run just kind of showing you the what if scenario. If you take the operational and then play what if by changing variables, you get different outcomes. There are still a few members of the ensemble package that bring it fairly sharp up the coast and into North Carolina, but a vast majority of the models now indicating a threat right over Cuba and then into maybe the southeast Gulf of Mexico. And what we need to see is whether or not this starts to shift back, this whole package this way some, or does it start shifting this way more? I don't think it's just going to stay the same. It's still too far out in time. Very, very interesting days ahead. A lot of people are going to be watching this for obvious reasons. This is interesting because you see this tremendous drop-off in the intensity around the day 5 to 5.5 time frame. Land interaction from that. I don't think it would go down to tropical storm strength myself, but it just depends on where the model that predicted that shows Irma tracking. The more land, the more the core gets disrupted, and it would weaken pretty dramatically. But we'll see. Still plenty of time to see how that works out. Wanted to show you this, just kind of visualizing what the different model packages look like. Visualization is a very important part of understanding probability, and you can see that the general idea from the ECMWF and its ensemble members is a track near the Antilles, lesser and greater, and then towards Florida, and the GFS is also indicating the same. So at least there is this consistency, which is helpful even if it's troubling to see what it shows, that we can prepare for it accordingly. Now, I want to look at this, all right? This is extremely important for you folks down here in the islands, because this is where this is headed first. So it's at 16.8 north right now. This latitude line right here is 15 degrees north latitude. And this next one is, of course, 16. So it's at 16.8 north, and let's see what the rest was, and 52.6 west, all right? So 16.8 would be, well, there's 15, 16.8, and then 52 and some change. So the eye is located basically right in here somewhere, roughly. That's where the eye is. And again, if it moved due west and didn't lose or gain any latitude, it would pass over some of these islands here directly, but it's not. It's going to, well, hopefully, it's not going to do that. Eventually, that it would gain some latitude, and let's change the color of this, on a track that's going to be more, and this is not necessarily exactly how this will go, but like that. So you folks here in the St. Martin, Antigua, maybe Guadeloupe, and then these islands right in here, I don't have them all memorized. We're going to zoom in on them in a second on Google Maps. But this is the area of the most concern for me. British U.S. Virgin Islands, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bart's down there. You could have the core of this hurricane pass over you, and if we zoom in and take a look at this really tight, this is what I'm talking about here. The core passing very close perhaps to Anguilla, Gustavia. I mean, you got these little islands out here, Barbuda perhaps, and then eventually over here to the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, the settlement. I mean, you guys that live down there, you know the area. What I want to show you is the impact from this, and let's just think about it. Let's go back to the Hurricane Center homepage for a second, and I want to show you something extremely important. All right? Come on, public advisory. Don't let me down. The hazards affecting land. Let's get rid of that red dot. No, I want the 48-hour. Here we go. The hurricane force wind part right here. This is what you really need to know. They extend out 35 miles and tropical storm force winds 140. Okay, so 35 and 140. Let's go back to the map. And you think about it, it's, you know, the hurricane is not a little dot. The eye is a dot, and, you know, it's about 15, 20 miles wide. And so hurricane force winds extend out 140 miles. So, you know, the eye could pass like this, but areas to the south of it will still be in those tropical storm force winds. This does not have, unfortunately, a drawing tool on here where I can show you radii from, where I can draw circles, but there's no reason to second guess this, is what I'm trying to get at here. Assume that the center is going to pass right through all of you. Just assume that at this point. Stop trying to say, well, maybe it'll go up here and we'll be okay. You cannot play in this situation with it getting closer. You cannot play that game. I am very serious, especially if it starts to intensify. You do not want to be caught with the eye sitting right over here and those hurricane force winds extending out something like that. I don't know if that's exactly right. And tropical storm force winds extending out like that, and you run out of time. All right, that's just an example. Do not mess with this. Follow hurricane preparedness procedures. Get your boats out of the water. Get your property prepared. Get away from the water if you can. Surge down here is not as big an issue as the big waves are. In this case, it's going to be the wind, and if this intensifies to a Category 4, it's just going to be worse. So take it seriously, follow the advice of your local government officials, and don't mess around with this and try to wait. People who wait, you're just wasting time. Please, please, please take my advice on this. It's been a while since a significant hurricane has passed through this region. You need to be absolutely preparing for this no matter what. Don't wait around for the next advisory package. In terms of the threat to the U.S. and elsewhere, looking down the road, again, a lot's going to have to do with whether or not the core passes over the Dominican Republic. And if it does, that means it's going to pass very close to Puerto Rico. So what's bad for here is very bad for here. So we're going to be watching that very closely. And then in terms of impact to the southeast United States, as they mentioned, the swells are going to start coming out from Irma and reaching the coast here over the next several days. Great for surfers, but just miserable conditions for beachgoers, because those swells, as it gets closer, could be enormous in size, and we'll take a look at that when the time comes. And then finally, you folks down here from certainly the Carolinas, but especially the southern Florida Peninsula, and of course the Bahamas here, and even in Cuba, of course, really need to be start to think about preparations down here in the Florida Keys. It's time. This hurricane season means business, and Irma is certainly something to keep a close watch on. Want to just talk about real quick where you can get information. Hurricane Impact is our app. That's what the logo looks like. It's in the iPhone App Store. You search Hurricane Impact. It's 2 words. It says Hurricane Impact by HurricaneTrack.com, and that is the logo that you look for. That's how you will know that it is our app. Why would you need the app? Why am I asking for your $4? Well, first of all, it helps to support what we do. That's the bottom line. I mean, this is my job. And secondly, you pay me to give you information, and information that's helpful and hopefully will help you make the right decisions. And in that, there are all kinds of neat things in this app. I can post quick update messages to the app, and there's a news feed in here, which you can see right up there. I update it frequently. The videos here go right into the video section. And then, if the time comes, the real power of the app is when there's a landfall. And this is what distinguishes my app from any other hurricane tracking app out there. And that is, I will take you there. We have the live weather data when we're in the field. It's not active right now because there's no landfall going on. And then we have live streaming video right in the app. And of course, as we track along, there is the tracking section with different maps and graphics that I can update at will right in the app. So get it on the App Store. I update it often, and then when it's time, assuming that it's going to be time to go into the field, it'll bring you some extraordinary in situ, as they call it, on location data and live coverage like you just can't get, not even from network TV, because it's totally different. We don't have commercials, so we don't have other programming to worry about. I appreciate immensely all the people that have been picking up the app. If you have the app and you want me to cover something, send me an email. All right, I'll post that in the app in that little special note later today. You can send me an email if you have a specific question. I want to hear from the app users And if you can leave a review in the App Store, that would be great too. If it's negative and you just hate it, don't ruin it. Send me an email and say what you hate about it, and maybe we can fix it. But I think it works pretty good. It's stable, and it's a good information-based app. And then when there's a landfall, I'm telling you people, you can't beat it. It's absolutely incredible. All right, enough pitching that. I got to do that part, though, because if I don't, I run out of money and I can't do this anymore. And we don't want that. I know I don't, because I appreciate the fact that you're on the other side, and I hope that I'm helping you out. All right, so this is the first update today. I will do another one tonight. It's going to be a fairly late one because I want to go over the 0Z GFS. I am not waiting up for the European model tonight. I've got to start getting some sleep because I might be getting in the car, or the SUV as it were, the Chevy Tahoe, and heading to Florida. And I don't want that to start alarming people. But, hey, the writing is beginning to be on the wall, and I need to prepare accordingly. All right, thanks for sitting through a lengthy one, but there is a lot to talk about. Yes, I know there are other interests in the Atlantic Basin, the Western Gulf, 94L. None of those pose a direct threat to anybody. I'm going to focus on Irma. I'm not ignoring those other features, except for the fact that they aren't important right now. They really aren't. They're not going to affect anybody with any adverse conditions in the near future, and if they change and do that, you bet I'll be talking about it. All right, so look for another update on Irma late this evening, probably, 1 a.m. Eastern time or so. Certainly follow me on Twitter at HurricaneTrack. By the way, all of my Twitter posts go into our app directly. You don't even have to go to Twitter. You can just look in the app. Just a little pro tip for you there. All right, that's it. I'm done. I got a lot of work to do to start getting ready. I'll be on top of this. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll be back with you with another video update late tonight.